What's been, in your mind, some of the best developments you've seen so far in practice, and what players have maybe made the best progress from day one to now?
Yeah, I think best developments is I think the guys are just grasping the offense. I think the whole group really is extremely coachable. So when we're asking them to do things, maybe a different way than they've done it, they're really receptive to that and have done a good job taking what we're coaching them to do and improving, daily, making those 1% gains that we always talk about. I think guys that have stood out, I think we're getting better and we're getting where we want to go on the offensive line. I think going against our D line every day in practice is definitely a challenge and is great for those guys. When it comes to Saturdays in the fall, that work that we're getting against those guys is really going to pay dividends, I think. And I think the tight ends have really stepped up. JC and TC are guys who we can feature and make plays. I've been doing a little bit more 12 personnel stuff with those guys than I ever have before in my career because those guys have earned that right to be out there at the same time. So kind of building out that package has been good. And I think our running backs are playing at a really high level right now as well.
And with some of the receivers, several of the top receiver guys have been down. Any of the other guys who have kind of taken advantage of that or had good days?
Yeah, those guys are doing a good job, and obviously with the some of the injuries that we had where the starters are missing some time right now. Thankfully nothing serious that's going to get into fall camp, but that's an opportunity for those young guys to kind of step up and show what they can do. I think one guy that stands out in my mind is Price Morgan. He's a guy who you can really count on. Is going to do what he's coached to do, and has really flashed as a guy that that I think can play for us.
Coach, from a QB perspective, what's kind of been the evaluation thus far in the spring, even though it's still early and you're still waiting on Barron?
Yeah, I think those guys are doing a phenomenal job. I feel really good about where we're at in that room. I think Will, I think he's so mature and such a hard work and all of those things. I think a lot of times when you're around him on a day-to-day basis, you forget that he's still a redshirt freshman. And so I think for where he's at in his development at this point in his career, I'm very excited about his future. I think Mitch Griffiths has been an unbelievable add to the room. A guy who I would feel very comfortable having to go play in a game with. Has learned the offense, is great for the room, and is a good player too. So I feel really good about those two. Holden Phillips has stepped in and done a great job for what we needed to this spring. Just goes out there and gets completion. So excited to add Barron back into the mix, this summer and start getting him reps, but feel really good about where that quarterback room is right now and where it's headed.
You've already mentioned quite a few names already, but is there a name that we're not talking about enough, like maybe kind of like an unsung hero type thing? Is there guys like, obviously we can't see what's going on in the practices, but is there somebody that's like coaching guys up, taking them under his wing, or all those little things that you see on the practice field that isn't mentioned enough?
Yeah, I think some of those guys, the guys who have been out have been doing a great job of that. I think Barron, as much as he can, has still been around and still been able to try to provide that kind of veteran leadership presence for those guys and for the receivers. And, I think, similarly in the receiver room, Coy and CD both kind of have that presence about them, that even though they're not out there taking reps, they're still able to kind of bring those young guys along.
Coach, what percentage of the offensive install has been implemented so far?
Hard to put an exact percentage, but once you get into game plans and everything gets a little bit more specific, I'd say maybe 60%, somewhere around there, 50, 60. We'll get a little bit more. Scheme development this summer when we do installs and have those couple hours in the summer that we get now. For me, really what I was looking for this spring is to be able to put the base. Hey, this is kind of our identity. This is who I want to be, and not try to scheme up the defense too much. I want our guys to get good at the fundamentals of what our base plays are and what we're going to hang our hat on. And then, this summer when we start kind of diving into opponents and start putting together some future game plan type thoughts, we'll get into maybe some of the more kind of unique schemes, and kind of fill in that remaining 40% or give or take.
A couple scrimmages in. What's the biggest difference between the offensive line and their performance versus the defense?
Just talking about the offensive line versus defensive line, you're saying? Mm-hmm. I think the offensive line has been doing a great job, given that they're going up against, guys. I mean, we're 2 or 3 deep at defensive line of guys who can really play. And so those guys have done a great job too, just because of some injuries and a guy missing a practice here or practice there, having great flexibility. rolled out there probably 4 or 5 different starting lineups with different pieces in different places. And so that's while it's tough for him right now having to learn, multiple positions, I think down the line that's going to really pay off for us as those guys having position flexibility to always, be able to put our best 5 out there. So I've been proud of those guys. They've competed well. And, we still got a ways to go. We still got a lot of work to do on some of the little details within the scheme and technique. But I think those guys are gonna get to where we're playing at a really high level up front.
Who on the defense has given the offense the most trouble and given you the biggest smile?
I'll be excited to see Romello Height rushing somebody else's quarterback instead of ours for sure. So they've got some really good D linemen. I think Bryce Pollock's another guy in the back end who I think's done a great job. Cole Wisniewski, I think he pretty much knows probably our playbook about as good as our offensive guys at this point. He's really intelligent in the back end and kind of almost the quarterback of the defense back there. So they've got some good players and I'll be excited to see him getting after somebody else's offensive line.
How does the way you coach and evaluate players during this NIL and transfer portal era change?
In terms of coaching, I don't think it really should change, and Coach McGuire talks about this all the time. I think kids still want to be coached hard. They still want to be held to a high standard. I do think the relationship component is huge within this day and age of college football. So I think making sure when we're not on the grass, we're spending time with the guys and having them over to the house, and them being around my family. My wife and kids are up at practice every day. So just being real with them and having a good relationship outside of the building, I think helps a lot. But when we're between the white lines, the standard, and we're going to hold those guys to a high standard and coach them hard. So I don't think that can change necessarily, right? You don't want your performance to ever drop because you're taking it easy on a guy in the way that you're coaching him. But there's a you got to kind of coach with the new era of college football in the terms of the roster changing and moving parts and all those kind of things. But I think we've done a great job of that so far.
Going back to your tight end room, JC, TC, there's a pretty stacked room that you have there. What do they bring to the table? What are they real close in similarities like, and what are their traits that are different from each other that give you kind of a bunch of different looks that you could throw at a defense?
Yeah, I think they're both similar in the fact that they both can contribute in the pass game and the run game. I think both of them are very good pass catchers, and both of them have shown to be solid in the run game. Where you get into the differences is JC is a little bit bigger body, really good straight line guy. Can go up there and kind of use his physical presence in the pass game a little bit. Is a really good inline blocker, point of attack blocker, to be able to use his length. So he does those kind of two things best in the run game and the pass game. Where TC is a pretty shifty route runner. He's really and a lot of times we do this. You can put him out there and he's basically as good of a slot receiver as we have. So you can put him out there and run the full route tree, and he's a mismatch for safeties and man-to-man. And if you put a linebacker on him, it's good luck on that one. And then in the run game, he's been good. He's got good strike. We use him kind of more in the off the ball, kind of sniffer back, to H-back type role, and he's done a really good job with that. So I think those guys are very versatile. I think Coach Cochran's doing a great job. Some of the deficiencies in their game, really working those out throughout spring. So I'm excited about where that room's headed. I'm excited to get Trey back, this summer, Trey Jackson, and continue developing him. I think Jason Llewellyn's another guy who's been very solid in what we're asking him to do. So that room is good right now. We're in a good spot there.
KP was in here just a while ago talking about some young guys in Leighton Stone and Michael Devers, both local talent here. What can you say about their progress that they've made so early on in the spring?
Yeah, Leighton probably, offensively might be one of the most improved players, from the start of spring ball to where he's at right now. I think that's a testament to his work ethic and his competitiveness too. He is a very naturally talented guy, but Coach Juice has done a great job, and he's very coachable in all the things that we're asking him to do. So he's made a big jump. Excited to see. I think his mindset and just the mentality, the way he plays the game, is exactly what you want. And then Michael Devers is a guy who's incredibly talented. He does some things that flash on tape, and you're like, wow, this kid's got a chance to be really special. And so with him, it's just working on, just like every freshman, just the consistency of, picking up the playbook and playing down in, down out, up to our standard. But both those guys, I think have a really bright future here as a receiver.
We've had the opportunity to speak with Coach Gary McGuire last week about the running backs room, and he basically told us that the feel is to run it by a committee. Can you talk a little bit more about how that fits in your system and kind of what to expect from it?
Yeah, I think the good thing, when you look at all three of those guys being guys that you feel good about contributing, I think we're always able to stay fresh. I think by the end of the game, when you have a bell cow, kind of running back situation, you get in the fourth quarter and that guy's had 25 carries, that'll wear on most guys. So the ability to keep those guys fresh and kind of ride the hot hand too. If we get into a game situation, somebody's really running the ball well, I think being able to feed that guy, and it's cool. One week that might be one guy, the next week, that's somebody completely different. And I think they all kind of bring a unique skill set to the table also. So being able to feature those guys in the game plan kind of different ways will be fun throughout the season.
And just in terms of the current state of the depth chart for the running back room, is there specific guys that you want at certain times and, say, 1st and 10 compared to 3rd and short?
I think all those guys are capable of being 3-down backs. We had a situation in the scrimmage. Jacoby's our smallest back, but he was in there on a 3rd and 2, and he kind of broke one off the right tackle and went for a 25-yard gain. So he was more than capable in those short yardage situations. And I think all those guys are really excelling in pass protection. I think Coach G's doing a great job in pass protection, and all of them can catch the ball out of the backfield. So there's really not a situation where we get stuck out there and it's like, man, why do we have this guy in the game? I think all of them can do all those things. With that being said, do we use Jacoby, or do you game plan plays with his skill set out of the backfield and ball in space, maybe a little bit different than Cam Dickey, where, you want to get him going downhill and kind of lean on people, potentially a little bit. But I think all those guys are very well-rounded.
And especially with a new guy like Joyner, how's he been so far just in the spring practice, and how do you see him stepping up within that room?
Yeah, he's been phenomenal. Really, probably even better than expected. So he's picked up the playbook well. I mean, he's doing all the he has the talent. There's no doubt about that. You see him run the ball. He's very gifted there. But he's really buying into doing all the little things. I mean, he had a great corner blitz pickup in the scrimmage. Like something that's pretty hard for a running back to see. He went over there and met the guy, saw it. So he's picking up, where his game is developing is just all the little things down in and down out that you have to do for us to trust you at that position. He's doing those at a really high level. So I'm very excited to, kind of his direction, his path, and his development so far this spring.
Going back to the QB room, how has Mitch Griffiths' veteran presence kind of helped all the other quarterbacks and even the receivers too?
Yeah, I think he's played a lot of football. The guy started 9 games in the ACC. He's been he's been at highs, he's been at lows, so he's had a lot of different experiences and has just a great demeanor about him. Where he's a little bit of a gunslinger. He'll go out there and let it rip, and isn't scared to go compete. And I think that's been good. Will being a young guy, wants to do everything perfect and it be exactly the way it's supposed to be. To try to continue. That's just kind of his personality. He's a little bit of a perfectionist, and so it's been good. Mitch can kind of loosen him up and relax him, and those guys have become really good friends. And I think the one thing I appreciate the most about that room right now is there's no animosity between any of those guys. I think they're all going out there and they're competing, against each other in a way, but we're all in that room. They're all rooting for each other. That's a really tight knit group right now, and so I like where kind of the personalities in that room are and how close those guys are.
Coach, final spring game on Saturday. Is there anything in specific that you're looking at?
It'll just be exciting to see the guys go out there and all the work that we've put in up to this point, just go and be able to kind of showcase that, and hopefully the guys kind of cut it loose and are able to play free. So it'll be good to kind of see them in that environment and just use that as another evaluation tool for us.
I guess what's your excitement level, right now, being able to have some fans be able to watch your product on the field right now? I know not everybody's here, nor are the fans all the way full as well, but be a little bit of a simulation of what's to come on Saturday.
Yeah, it'll be cool. I'm excited for that. I'm excited to kind of get a taste of, maybe a little bit what game day might be like, so it'll be fun for sure.
Reggie Virgil, how have you seen him progress throughout practices, and what makes him such a valuable aspect and a talent?
Yeah, I think he was really making strides. He got banged up last week, so kind of holding him through the rest of the spring ball. Again, all those receivers, nothing serious, kind of more precautionary. But he's really been progressing a lot. I think as a route runner and just holistic, like his whole game and his whole package as a receiver has grown a ton, you know, in the 8 or 9 practices that he got. I think the talent and the vertical speed and the ability to make plays down the field is kind of what stood out early. And then as spring kind of went and he kept developing and Juice kept, you know, coaching him, I think you saw his whole route tree kind of come out. So he's really a complete receiver. So I feel really good about, you know, the 2 outside guys that we started spring with CD and Reggie. I think that's going to be a really good 1-2 punch out there.
Just real quick, you mentioned you're using a lot more 12 personnel now with the tight end. Does that change how you view what you can do with the offense? Has that shifted any, or does that just kind of add another wrinkle to what you can do?
It just kind of adds a wrinkle, you know, and I think it'll be that's a game plan type thing. You know, 1 week you might want to use a little bit more 12 personnel. 1 week we might be a little bit more 11. You know, when everybody gets back healthy, we'll even feature a little bit of 10 personnel. And we've been doing some stuff, you know, with all the running backs that we have. To the question earlier, you know, 2 running backs on the field at the same time. So personnel wise, we have you know, it's I guess a luxury to have. You have some guys that you can kind of play with and mix it up a little bit more than I have in the past. So you know, I think that'll be something just kind of game plan specific on, you know, kind of what direction we take. But we do have the ability to kind of do all of those things throughout the season, which is exciting.
All right, thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.